Welcome to Buddhaland Podcast. I'm Stacy. Today I'm joined by Zehui Duan, the founder and CEO of FluviusH2, a company focused on green hydrogen technology. A doctoral researcher in chemistry from the University of Oxford, she has co-authored numerous articles on hydrogenases and materials in leading journals such as Nature and Chemical Science. Zehui, welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to join you here.
To begin with, tell us more about FluviusH2. What is about, and when and why did you found the company?
I started Fluvius Hydrogen at the end of 2024, and to be honest, I wasn't really determined to do a startup at that time because during my whole PhD, I was doing fundamental research on enzyme catalyst, hydrogen production. But there's a huge gap between fundamental research and application. And I don't have any work experience before that. So that was a bit hesitate for me to start a company right after I leave the uni. But then the year 2024 was kind of, I'd say one of the worst years for hydrogen industry because people finally realized that the core problem of green hydrogen is the energy conversion efficiency. But because we've known enough about enzyme inspired by the nature, like the nature catalyst, so this kind of enzyme could potentially solve this problem. And I thought, yeah, I'm a fast learner, and why not just give it a try? So yeah, that's how I started.
Wow, that's really amazing. So, where are you currently in your company journey? Is it in early stage R&D or way beyond that?
We've got our first product that's called FH1, and
Mm-hmm.
we've got the first order of FH1
Wow,
as well. Yeah,
congratulations.
so that's a huge milestone for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still really active because we know there are so many things we can do to improve our product.
For listeners who are new to this, how is green hydrogen actually made, and what makes it green as opposed to other types of hydrogen? Because there has been so much discussion around it. And what advantages does green hydrogen bring to the broader clean energy transition?
I realize that nowadays hydrogen names are color coded, like
Hmm.
green hydrogen, pink hydrogen, gray
Pink.
hydrogen. Yeah, even pink hydrogen and also
Okay.
blue hydrogen. So for green hydrogen, that's usually the really traditional way of getting hydrogen from like coal, for example, petrol. And so we wouldn't say that's a sustainable way of getting hydrogen. But for like blue hydrogen, that's mostly the byproduct of industry. But the purity of blue hydrogen is usually a problem. For green hydrogen, that's what we're doing now. That's produced from water electrolyzing. So that means we split water using electricity to make it oxygen and hydrogen. So this is a sustainable way of making hydrogen, especially if you have like wind or solar energy to provide the energy to splitting water. And pink hydrogen is, I think, the hydrogen produced by nuclear power. So yeah, there are so
See.
many colors, but we mainly focusing on green hydrogen.
That's a wonderful foundation. Green hydrogen compared to gray or blue can actually achieve zero carbon emission. I think that's why people just see it as so important for energy security.
Yeah, I mean, if the electricity you've used to produce green hydrogen is green, then it is.
Okay, so are you also talking about the process of making it? Sometimes different methods may not achieve zero carbon emissions.
Yeah, so because hydrogen is not an energy resource, it's
Hmm.
just an energy carrier or energy
Yeah.
vector. So as a high like energy density vector, we need to convert some energy into hydrogen. And if that energy is green, for example, from solar and wind, then yes, we're doing really zero carbon emission. But if
Uh,
those like energy is from, for example, petrol, then it's not. So it depends on what energy resource you're using to make hydrogen.
Mm. Yeah, I think for listeners who are new to this, I have also been studying the green hydrogen is basically a carrier. We're going to talk more about that, but let's also look at enzyme or hydrogenases that you are working with. You mentioned that it is something that we found in nature, like certain bacteria and algae, and they have been quietly producing hydrogen for billions of years. And I just find that very beautiful because, of course, we're talking about industry, industrial machinery and all this modern technology. But at the very moment, carbon emissions that we humans produce are doing harm to our natural environment. Nature is still offering humanity part of the answer. Just curious, at FluviusH2, are you working with living organisms or synthetic mimics of these enzymes, or is something in between?
It's actually a combination of both of them. So we use protein because enzyme is a kind of protein, and we produce this kind of protein from E. coli. So that's a living organism. And we also use a bit of our chemical synthetic mimics to help our enzyme like give the best performance. So yes, we're kind of taking advantage of the nature and human design.
Yeah, and also human innovation.
Yeah.
I've also read that oxygen sensitivity is one of the key obstacles in the
Mhm,
space.
mhm.
How are you navigating that? Have you totally resolved it, or it is an ongoing process?
Well, it's an ongoing process. We've made a lot of progress in the past few months. We haven't published that yet, but we can see that I think we found the way to solve this problem by using molecular biology.
It sounds like the potential of green hydrogen is clearly enormous. But of course, potential and reality may be very different. I think there have been a lot of questions, and of course, you're really the pioneers in the space. But let's be honest about where the industry actually stands right now, and how do you see it evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
So hydrogen industry is quite huge. It got different parts, and the two important parts is hydrogen production and hydrogen usage. So for hydrogen production, that's we use especially for green hydrogen, we turn electricity to energy, and this converting efficiency. And I'd say the whole industry is a bit suffering on the cost of electricity needed for producing hydrogen. So our mission is to lower the amount of electricity needed for producing hydrogen. And the other side is a hydrogen fuel cell that's so converting hydrogen to electricity. And for that bit, that is really problematic. So when you say like what we can do right now is to lower the cost for both hydrogen production and hydrogen usage. That is, we need to definitely improve the catalytic efficiency for both of them. So nowadays, especially in the mainland, there are so much progress that has been made on equipment. So for example, the equipment to do water electrolysis and like water electrolyzers and fuel cell, they are extremely cheap and really well developed nowadays. So this is a good part. But then the kind of the downside is not much fundamental research have been done on improving the catalyst performance, and that's still a major problem. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, the biggest breakthrough will be probably come from new catalyst systems that can actually reduce the energy loss and lower the cost of green hydrogen production.
I have another question, not directly related to your research, but I've also heard that the storage and transportation can also be challenging because hydrogen is not really stable, and then the pressure and all that, like where we are in terms of resolving that part?
Yeah, so we're not directly developing anything to help us transporting or storing hydrogen, but we're using another method because if we can produce hydrogen like everywhere, then we don't need to worry about the transportation. And if we can produce it with a really like a fast speed really quickly, then we don't need to worry about the storage. So the problem nowadays for green hydrogen production using water electrolyzer is the safety. There are several tragic examples in the past years of water electrolyzers being, a bomb because of oxygen and hydrogen with high pressure. And if they got mixed, then of course it's really tragic to have something, take people's life. But for us, we're developing a really new method to produce green hydrogen without producing oxygen. So that would definitely increase the safety of producing hydrogen and potentially could be used safely, for example, in city center in crowded.
Wow, that's really impressive. Just now you mentioned mainland China, and Asia Pacific in general seems to be moving very aggressively in this space. So is Europe and the US seems complicated because they have uncertain policy making process. How do you read the global landscape? Could green hydrogen become a new axis of geopolitical competition the way oil was in the 20th century?
Actually, the US and Canada has always been the leaders of fuel cell in the past decades. A lot of techniques now we're using here in the mainland was actually come from the US and Canada. But I think the first thing is the hydrogen usage part. But then you got produce green hydrogen in very low price to make the
Mm.
whole business story sounds, reasonable. And they've been a bit left behind on that. So I don't think hydrogen is that crucial in the future because it would mainly used as a supplement energy resources instead of the main one because it's just like a vector of solar energy and wind energy and other sustainable energy that you can get from basically everywhere. So yeah, I wouldn't overemphasize the importance of hydrogen, but this is something that you can't just avoid or skip.
Yeah, it is indeed a very complex and fast moving industry. You came from a very strong academic background, which operates very differently. How did you find the transition from research to running a company? Was it a natural progression or did it come with unexpected challenges? I think you may have a lot to say.
Yeah, so that's definitely a really good question. Because in academia, we do fundamental research, like really fundamental ones.
Mm,
And we aim to just find the answers to natural phenomena. And like, for example, our enzyme in the uni, we study the the catalytic mechanism of the enzyme. And sometimes we will find like a really interesting, for example, like the intermediate state of the enzyme, and we want to dig deeper. And that's really cool exploring around.
yeah.
But, well, for company development, obviously we can't do that. We have to turn science into a product that could be used to produce cheap, like the really cheap green energy to survive. So the customers normally, the only question they ask is the price. How much does this green hydrogen cost? So we have a really clear mission here in the company that is to lower the cost of green hydrogen. Yeah, so because the mission is entirely different, but there are some really transferable skills we could take from academia to industry. For example, as a scientist by training, I always like to solve technical problem from bottom up, and that helps us to identify the real pinpoint, and also that would definitely reduce the cost of solving the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Academia encourage you to explore and discover and dig deeper, but the industry and the business world wants you to profit
Yeah.
and you need to survive in this harsh environment. But I'm sure the entrepreneurial journey can also be rewarding in some way. What are some of the important lessons that you have learned that your time at university simply could not teach you?
I would say, there are many things we could pick up really quickly, but I think the true skill I've learned, obviously with some suffering in this company, is the management bit. So, because when I was in the lab in the uni, the only thing I need to manage is just lab equipment, and they're easy to get along with.
Yeah, they have no emotions. They have no strong reactions.
No, but now, as a startup, so first we need some time to build company regulations and SOPs for daily operations. But in the meantime, we don't want to slow down the R&D progress. So I have to sort of find a way to manage the company without those SOPs, just from, by my instinct and communicate with our employees, because we have three different R&D teams and a marketing team. So I have to make them coordinate together. Yeah, that's something I've suffered, but the skill I picked up, I think, most valuable.
Now you're based in Hong Kong.
Mhm.
So you also brought some of your schoolmates to Hong Kong as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah, previous colleagues.
So you had a good start. At least you have some true colleagues who transitioned from academia to the business world together with you.
Mhm.
But to operate the whole business, you also hired new people, right? Like,
Yeah.
are you also in the process of hiring people, identifying people? Like, do you think you're always right about like, oh, whether this person will fit into this role?
Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
We've been hiring in the past several months, and now I think we have a rather stable and optimized R&D
Mm,
team. So that's really a relief. But this process was like really difficult because I think I've hired like over 10 employees, and I fired three of them.
mm-hmm.
Two of them, when I fired them, that was the probation period, so that was okay. Before we had a bit of a conflict at some
Yeah.
point. So no, it takes time to optimize the whole team. It's nothing like just smoothly happen.
Yeah. I think in academia, it's very straightforward. You can work with other people to write an article together, but to actually manage people in an organization, I think that is challenging for every manager because each person is different. And then you also react differently, chemistry, right? But nevertheless, I want to congratulate you because you are still so young. You are still in your late 20s, right? And yeah, and you are learning fast. So you should really congratulate yourself because it is a big achievement.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think strength and resilience often comes from somewhere deeper than professional training. I'd love to
Mhm.
explore that with you. So your career has been spent studying matter at its most fundamental level. As you mentioned, in chemistry, we talk about properties, reactions, how bonds form and break, very much like humans and then how energy is transferred. Has that changed how you see the world, how you experience the world? And you also described a shift in your spiritual orientation over the years. I'm just curious whether your science and inner life have been in conversation with each other.
Okay, so it was really important that you mentioned the bond, the breaks, and the build, because that's a bit of the quantum chemistry I've done when I was in Imperial, when I was a master. And that is to explore the kind of the edge of humans' knowledge about nature, how everything works. And I think normally as scientists, probably people would say, well, scientists believe in science, right? But that's not true, especially for scientists who do fundamental researches, because we are really humble and That's because just so many things we can't explain with the science nowadays. So, of course, we want to find a guidance somewhere else. Also, because I was in Europe and UK from my age 20 to 25, so that was quite important period for me developing my own mind about everything, basically. And I was really fascinated by thousands of years of history in Europe, like ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. I do realize that many like religions and myths were closely connected and being used to preserving history, culture, um, before modern technology existed to recording history. Those religions and myths might be, not the guidance we've been looking for. It's just a way of recording the past. So after I come to Hong Kong, actually, right after I come to Hong Kong, I was really lucky to meet a really prestigious Buddhist teacher. And he kind of explained to me Buddhism is not just a religion, it's more like a philosophy. And this is a kind of philosophy that I think we can find the inner peace in this uncertain world that we can't explain. So that's kind of my journey of transitioning from I wouldn't say I believed in other religions. I usually
Mm-hmm.
just take them, as different culture.
Yeah.
But now I think Buddhism is like way beyond a kind of culture or religion. So it's something higher in dimension, and I was quite fascinated by it.
Because you have been observing matter on a fundamental level. So you see how things are aggregates, like how even a human is aggregates of different elements. And I just feel that really reflect the Buddhist concept of no self. There's no single cell that defines you or defines me. And also the reactions in lab explains the impermanence in Buddhism. So yeah, I just feel that you have this privilege to look at things on a fundamental level. So probably you can understand these concepts even deeper than some of us could not have that perspective.
Actually, what you said is quite similar to my Buddhist teacher said to me. That's how he convinced me that Buddhism is a kind of philosophy, because he was a chemistry student in the uni as well.
I see.
And he explained Buddhism in terms of quantum chemistry. So that really, sensible to me.
That's wonderful. Also, I found a lot of intellectual people or scientists, they may be agnostic, like they may feel that they're constantly exploring what is God or their relationship with God.
Mhm.
With people around you, like what kind of spiritual orientations do other scientists have from your observation?
So I don't think there's a common thing they believe in, but the one thing I can say is everyone is really humble.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know that we are just human beings, the things we've produced. For example, let's go back to green hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So, the
Yeah.
artificial catalyst that a human brain has designed in the past decades is way less efficient than
Mm.
enzymes. So that's something, we can't just pretend we are the world builder. We can just do whatever we want. Our ability is really limited. So we have to be humble to the unknown. And that's most scientists would do. Like, they will have a really open mind to taking out different religions or theories that could possibly be a part of their research.
Thank you so much, Zehui. It has been a fascinating conversation and I learned a lot. I wish you all the best with FluviusH2. It is a very important project. Thank you for listening to Buddhaland podcast. Wherever you are, we're grateful that you showed up. Until next time.